Welcome back, everyone. In today's video, we're diving into an important topic: how to retrieve and manage HTTP headers in Spring Boot. Whether you're building APIs or working with external services, handling HTTP headers properly is crucial for smooth communication and security. Till now, we've learned how to handle query parameters, path parameters, and request bodies like pros. We also mastered calling REST APIs using REST template. But today, we're stepping it up a notch. We're going to dive into something super important: how to retrieve and manage HTTP headers in your Spring Boot applications. Whether it's handling authentication, content types, or custom data, HTTP headers are everywhere. So, let's explore how to work with them and make our APIs even more powerful. Let's get started. First, let's open the demo controller class. Create a getAPI method and set the path URL as demo/headers. We want to send a plain text response. So we'll add produces equals text/plain. Now, how do we get the headers from the request? Spring provides us with a great annotation at request header. This helps us capture any headers sent with the request. As you can see on the screen, this annotation has three important parameters. Name: here, we specify the name of the header we're interested in. Required: this indicates if the header is mandatory or optional. By default, it's true, but we can make it optional by setting it to false. Default value: if the header is not provided in the request, we can define a default value to use. Define our header name as header1. And inject the value of header1 directly into a string variable. Let's print it out to verify we're receiving the correct data or not. Send back the same header name and its value in the response, so we can confirm that everything is working smoothly. Next, let's start the service to apply. Great, the application has started successfully. Now, let's move over to Postman and test our API. Now, let's create a new HTTP request in Postman and set the method to get since our endpoint is a GET request. Type in the URL localhost 8080/employee service/demo/headers. Make sure to include the employee service context path we've set. Next, click on the Headers tab, where you can add custom headers. Add a header named header1 and give it any value you like. Once the header is set, click Send. Now, check the response. As you can see, the header and its value that we sent in the request are returned in the response. To double-check, let's look at the logs in IntelliJ. If you check the logs, you can see that the value we sent in the header is successfully injected into the variable, confirming that everything is working perfectly. Alright, let's take things up a notch. So far, we've been manually injecting each header into separate variables, but imagine if you had to handle tons of headers. That would get messy, right? Don't worry. Spring's got us covered with the HTTP headers class. Instead of defining each header individually, we can collect all headers in one neat package using this class. It's like having a special container that holds all your headers in one place, making the code much cleaner and easier to manage. We will take the method we created earlier and copy it. This allows us to reuse the logic and just modify the URL and the way we handle headers. Changed URL to demo/headers1. In the previous method, we were directly injecting individual headers into variables using the @requestHeader annotation. Now we want to handle all headers dynamically, so we'll use the HttpHeaders class. Use requestHeader annotation to inject all header in HttpHeaders variable. HttpHeaders class is a type of multi-value map, which means it can store multiple values for a single header key. It's perfect for handling headers where a key can have multiple values, such as accept, authorization, etc. HttpHeaders class handles multiple values for the same header. For example, if a header contains multiple values, we can retrieve them using the get method. If you only need the first value for a header, use the getFirst method. This method will return just the first value, even if there are multiple values for the same header. As you can see on the screen, we're using the getFirst method to fetch the value of the header1 key. Let's say you want to see all the key value pairs from the headers. For this, you can use the entrySet method. This method returns a set of all the entries in the HTTP headers, where each entry represents a key and its associated values. Alright, everything is set up. Restart the application. The application has successfully started. Now, let's switch over to Postman. Modify the URL to localhost 8080/employee-service/demo/header1 for this test. As shown on the screen, Postman automatically adds certain headers, like user agent, accept, etc., to every request. These are default headers sent by Postman itself. You can also include your custom headers to test how our application handles the. Now, let's click the send button. Take a look at the response. You can see that the value we sent for header1 is coming back exactly as expected. Let's verify with the logs. So, in Postman, we sent 5 to 6 headers, right? Now, when we check the logs, we can clearly see that all those headers came through, and we printed them out using HttpHeaders. It's like we're seeing our headers come to life in the logs. And the best part? Everything is working smoothly, just as we expected. This shows that we've successfully retrieved and managed HTTP headers in our Spring Boot application. It's all about making sure the headers are correctly processed, and we're doing just that. Thanks for joining us today. Today, we took a deep dive into HTTP headers in Spring Boot. We learned how to use the @requestHeader annotation to extract headers from requests, and how to work with HTTP headers to handle multiple headers in a more organized way. We also verified our setup using Postman and checked our logs to ensure everything was working smoothly. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next adventure. We have more exciting content coming your way. In our next video, we'll explore Web Client, the powerful tool for making HTTP requests in Spring Boot.